Welcome back. This is Portland Math Tutor. Today we are working on the math sections of the practice test number 5 for the SAT. Here we're going to start with section 3. This is the no calculator section, and here is the formula sheet that you can reference. Okay, number 1. We have a graph here, and we want to know which of the following is an equation of the line L in the xy plane above. Well, we know that this should be very familiar to you. mx plus b. The y-intercept is b, and we can see that the only one with a y-intercept is going to be this one, d, x plus 1. If we look at the first one, x equals 1, that's going to be a vertical line like so. Y equals 1 is going to be a horizontal line like so. And y equals x, that's going to be a vertical line like so. Same slope, but through the origin. So the answer is D. Okay, number 2. The circle above with center O has a circumference of 36. What is the length of minor arc AC? Well, minor arc AC is intercepted by a 90-degree angle. The arc length is going to be proportional to the central angle. And we see that 90 out of the whole 360 will be equal to the arc length AC out of the whole circumference. The circumference is 36. Okay, we want to isolate the arc, so we're going to multiply both sides by 36, and we'll get 90 times 36 over 360 equals the arc length. Okay, well, I can divide both the top and the bottom by 10. I'll get rid of the zeros, and I can divide the top and the bottom by 30. I'll get the arc length of AC is equal to 9. Okay. 3. What are the solutions of the quadratic equation? Okay, I always am trying to make my life easier. If you have a quadratic or any other equation you're trying to solve, usually it helps to factor out any common factors. And I see right away that 4 is a common factor for all of these terms. I'll be left with x squared minus 2x minus 3. Now we're really looking for what x values make these factors equal 0, because the zero product property says that one of them has to be 0. Well, 4 is never 0, so we're really just going to be focused on this quadratic here. So I'm going to take that quadratic and I'm going to factor it. A equals 1 in this case, so really the shortcut for this is that I'm looking for two numbers that will multiply to C and add to B. Okay, well, factors of -3, I'm just going to look at the positive factors to start with. Well, it's just 1 and 3, given that one of them has to be negative. So that means that I can factor this as such. I know that -3 and +1 will add up to -2. So I've got x plus 1, x minus 3 equals 0, and therefore which x values are going to make either of these two factors equals 0? Well, It's going to be -1 for the first. It's going to be +3 for the second. So those are my solutions. X equals -1 and +3. B. Okay. Number 4. Which of the following is an example of a function whose graph in the xy plane has no x-intercepts? A linear function whose rate of change is not 0. Well, in that case, a linear function whose rate of change is not 0, that means it can't be horizontal. So it has to either be going up or it has to be going down. And eventually you will have x-intercepts in either of those cases, so no. A quadratic function with real zeros. A quadratic function with real zeros, that means that the real zeros are actually the x-intercepts. Okay, either it's opening up or opening down. It will, if it has real zeros, then it has x-intercepts. Okay. Quadratic function with no real zeros. Well, that means that it doesn't touch the x-axis. Either goes up or goes down, opens up or opens down, but does not touch the x-axis. And yes, that a quadratic with no real zeros will have no x-intercepts. And then D, just to look at it just for fun, is a cubic with at least one real zero. Well, a cubic with one real zero is going to be opening up or going up from left to right, or it could be going down from left to right. Either way, it will have an x-intercept. Answer is C. Okay. The equation above, k is a constant. If x equals 9, what is the value of k? Okay, so we're just going to be plugging in some values here and then solving the equation. We have k plus 2, and x is 9, so minus 9 equals 0. Okay, I'm going to add 9 to both sides and get square root of x plus 2 equals 9. And then square both sides. If I square a square root, I'm just left with the argument. And if I square the 9, I get 81. Subtract 2 from both sides, I'm going to get 79. D is the solution. Okay. Which of the following is equivalent to the sum of the expressions a squared minus 1 and a plus 1? Okay, well, that is going to be, let's see, so a squared minus 1 plus a plus 1. Okay. Now, in this case, it looks like the ones are going to cancel out, and we're going to be left with just, oops, we're just going to be left with a squared plus a squared plus a. A is the solution. Okay. Jackie has 2 summer jobs. She works as a tutor, which pays $12 per hour, and she works as a lifeguard, which pays $9.50 per hour. She can work no more than 20 hours per week, but she wants to earn at least $220 per week. Which of the following systems of inequalities represents the situation in terms of x and y, where x is the number of hours she tutors? Okay, so I'm just going to highlight that. X is the number of hours she tutors. Okay, and that looks like she's getting paid $12 an hour for tutoring. $12 an hour for tutoring. And y represents the number of hours she works as a lifeguard. And if she works as a lifeguard, she's going to get $9.50 per hour. Okay. So, let's see. We know that the number of hours that she works as a lifeguard plus the number of hours that she works as a tutor has to be less than or equal to 20 hours. All right? That's the first restriction that we got. Okay. Secondly, she wants to earn at least $220. So that's going to be, she wants to earn at least $220. So greater than, her earnings want to be greater than or equal to 220. And the amount that she earns as a tutor is going to be $12 times the number of hours that she tutors. And the money she earns as a lifeguard is going to be $9.50 times the number of hours she works as a lifeguard. So we're just trying to find these two systems. And this first one, A, it says that she has to work greater than 20 hours. That's not right. And she wants to earn less than $220. Okay, that's not going to work. The second one, B, says that she's going to work less than 20 hours, but it says she wants to earn less than $220 as well. So that's not it. So A and B are not solutions. Next, it says that she wants to work less than 20 hours and earn more than $220. That sure looks like our solution here. And then finally, D says that she wants to work greater than $220. Excuse me, greater than 20 hours, which is not the case. So C is our solution. Okay. 8. In air, the speed of sound in meters per second is a linear function of the air temperature, T, in degrees Celsius, and is given as S of T equals 6/10 T plus 331.4. Which of the following statements is the best interpretation of the number 331.4 in this context? Well, you should be thinking about y equals mx plus b. That should come out right away. The constant in this linear equation is going to be the y-intercept, and we know that there's a positive slope, a very slight positive slope. That's fine. And we know that the output is speed. The output of this function is speed, and the input is temperature. So then what this is saying is that at 0 degrees temperature, the speed is going to be equal to 331.4. Okay, let's look at this. So A, the speed of sound in meters per second at 0 degrees Celsius. Yes, that looks like our solution. Let's go ahead and read the rest. The speed of sound in meters per second at 0.6 degrees Celsius. Nope, 0.6 is the rate of change for this function. C, the increase in the speed of sound in meters per second that corresponds to an increase of 1 degree Celsius. No, that's also going to be rate of change. Rate of change is 0.6. The increase in the speed of sound in meters per second that corresponds with an increase of 0.6. That doesn't have any, that has no correlation. Okay, next. All right, if xy is a solution of the system of equations above and x is greater than 0, what is the value of xy? Okay, so I think we're just going to do a direct substitution here. We know that y equals, let's get a pen here. We know that y equals x squared, so we can substitute y with x squared in our equation. So we're going to get 2 times x squared plus 6 equals, and I'm going to distribute that 2. That'd be 2x plus 6. Now we have a quadratic equation. To solve a quadratic, we set it equal to 0. So I'm going to move everything to the left. I'm going to get 2x squared going to subtract 6 from both sides. Well, the 6's are going to cancel out. And then I'm going to subtract 2x from both sides. And squeeze that in there, minus 2x. Okay, well, I'll get 2x squared minus 2x equals 0. Yeah, so kind of getting a little sloppy here. All right, so if we want to factor this, or sorry, if we want to solve this, we need to factor. I see that I can factor out of 2x. I'll be left with x minus 1 equals 0. Okay, this is going to, our factors here are going to correspond to x equals 0. If x is 0, that would make our first factor equals 0. And then if x equals 1, that would make our second factor equal 0. So our two solutions are 0 and 1. We know that we need to be, keep doing that. We know that x has to be greater than 0, so therefore x has to be 1. A is our solution. Okay. If a squared plus b squared equals z and ab equals y, which of the following is equivalent to 4z plus 8y? Okay. Well, let's figure out what 4z would be. 4z, if I know that a squared plus b squared equals z, well then I know that 4 times a squared plus b squared equals 4z. Okay. And I know that y equals ab. So if I know that ab equals y, then I also know that 8 times ab equals 8y. Okay, so we're just going to be adding, we're going to be adding 8y and 4z. Okay, well, that means that we're going to be adding this and this. Okay, so let's do that. We're going to have 4, and I'm going to distribute, so it'll be 4a squared plus 4b squared plus 8ab. Okay, well, this looks like a quadratic, and to factor it, I'm going to get my squared terms as term 1 and term 3. So I'm going to put 4a squared in front. I'm going to put my second term as 8ab, and then my fourth term as 4b squared. Okay, so I'm just gonna think about what my first term is going to be for each of these solutions. Well, my first term is going to be the first term here. The first term here times itself, right? Because these are all perfect squares. They're going to be multiplying the binomial times itself. So my first term on A is going to be a squared. My first term on B will be 4a squared. My first term on C would be 16a squared, and then 16a squared for the last one as well. Well, I can see that the only possible solution would be B, right? That's the only one that has a 4a squared. 4a squared. None of the other solutions would work. Okay. 11. The volume of a right circular cylinder A is 22 cubic centimeters. What is the volume in cubic centimeters of a right circular cylinder with twice the radius and half the height of cylinder A? Okay, so let's just write out the formula for the volume of a cylinder, right circular cylinder. The volume is going to be the area of the base, and it's a circular cylinder, so it's going to be pi r squared, and then times the height. Okay, that's going to be the volume. And we know that the volume for a particular cylinder is 22, so it's 22 with a specific radius and a specific height. And we want to know what happens when we double the twice the radius and half the height. So that's going to be a question. What's going to happen to the volume? But we know that the radius, is going to double squared and then half of the height. Okay, so I'm going to expand that out. I'm going to get pi, it's going to be 4r squared, and then 1/2 the height. Okay, so then ultimately what happens is I have the 4 and the half, that's going to be 2 pi r squared times the height. So I'm actually going to be doubling, right? So we know that this pi r squared times height was 20, so it's going to be 22, 2 times 22, and that's going to be 44. All right, got which of the following is equivalent to 9 to the 3/4? Okay, well, this is a power with a fractional exponent. We know that the numerator is going to be an exponent, and the denominator is going to be a root. So it's going to be either the 4th root of 9 to the 3rd, or the fourth root of 9 to the 3rd. I think I'm going to work with the first one here. I think that's going to be most productive, because I can see that I can turn 9 into 3 to the 2nd power raised to the 3rd. Okay. Well, that's going to be 4th root of power to a power. You multiply the exponents. That's going to be 3 to the 6th. 4th root of 3 to the 6th. Okay. Then I can turn it back into a power. Remember, the exponent's going to be the numerator, so it's going to be 3 to the 6/4. Well, I know that 3 to the 6/4, kind of getting squeezed in here, 3 to the 6/4 can be reduced to 3 to the, what's that going to be? That's going to be 3/2. Okay, so 3 to the 3/2, that's going to be equal to the square root of 3 to the 3rd power, which is 27. That's still not one of my solutions, but I can simplify this square root of 27, because I know it's the product of 27 is the, I'm going to write it over here. I know that 27 is the product of 9 times 3. And I know the square root of 9 is, I can break this up into 2 square roots. That's going to be square root of 9 is 3 times, square root of 9 is 3 times the square root of 3. It's going to be D as our solution. Okay, number 13. At a restaurant, in cups of tea are made by adding tea tea bags to hot water. If T equals in plus 2, how many additional tea bags are needed to make each additional cup of tea? This is coming up all the time on the SAT. Y equals mx plus b. The output is equal to the rate of change times the input plus the y-intercept, plus the starting value. And if the input, if one additional cup of tea, that means n is increasing by 1, then the output is going to increase by the slope, whatever the coefficient on n is, and that is 1. So we're going to need 1 additional tea bag for every additional cup of tea. 14. F of x equals 2 to the x plus 1. The function f is defined by the equation above, which of the following is the graph of y equals negative f of x in the xy plane. Well, let's first think about what get my pen here. Okay, there we go. X 2 to the x plus 1. Well, that's going to be the exponential function shifted up 1 unit. Yeah, so our horizontal asymptote will have been shifted up by 1 unit. And if we're sticking a negative in front of our function, that's going to affect the y values. So that's going to be a vertical reflection, not a horizontal reflection, which is A. That would be a horizontal reflection. B would be a vertical shift. C would be a C. Yeah, that would look like a vertical reflection. Yep. So C. Okay. D. All right, because now the horizontal asymptote is at -1. Okay. D would be a reflection, but it's a reflection over the line of y equals 1, which is not what we want. We want a reflection over the x-axis. C is our solution. Okay. Alan drives an average of 100 miles each week. His car can travel an average of 25 miles per gallon of gasoline. Alan would like to reduce his weekly expenditure on gasoline by $5. Assuming gasoline costs $4 per gallon, which equation can Alan use to determine how many fewer average miles M he should drive each week? Okay, well, let's think about this. Let's see. If he spends if it's 100 miles each week, and he gets 25 miles per gallon, then 100 divided by 25 would be the number of gallons that he uses. And if we multiply that times 4, which is the cost per gallon, that would equal his expenditure each week. All right, so it's miles. It's miles divided by 25 times 4 equals how much he spends for gas. And if he wants to decrease his expenditure by 5, well, how many miles can he drive for $5, right? So if he wants to reduce by $5, how many miles makes $5 or costs $5? Well, we know that that we're taking the amount of miles divided by 25 is the number of gallons, and we would have to multiply that times 4 to figure out how much expenditure it is. Now, let's see if this 425. Okay, so it doesn't look like it's in the same format, but that's okay. Let's look. So on A, it's well, let's just rearrange this. So we can rewrite this as 4m over 25 equals 5. And then we could pull that m out. We get 4 over 25 times m equals 5. So that would be the average number of miles that cost him $5 that he should reduce his weekly commute. So that is going to be D. 16. Maria plans to rent a boat. The boat rental costs $60 per hour, and she would also have to pay for a water safety course that costs $10. Okay, so right away you should be thinking, okay, this is a linear equation, and I should be thinking about my slope-intercept form because it gives me the rate of change and it gives me a set cost. Maria wants to spend no more than $280 for the rental course. If the boat rental is available only for a whole number of hours, what is the maximum number of hours for which Maria can rent the boat? Well, let's see, we've got the $60 per hour, and we say H, and then we have a $10 rental fee, and we want to pay no more than $280. So let's subtract 10 from both sides. 270 is greater than or equal to 60h. Divide by 60. We'll get 270 over 60 is greater than or equal to the hours. Okay, well, I'm going to pull out, divide top and bottom by 10. And then I'm going to see, oh, that's going to equal, well, 6 goes into 27, goes into 24 4 times, with a remainder of 3. And that is going to be 3 out of 6 is 0.5. So we know that 0.5 is greater than or equal to the number of hours. And we know that the rental is only available for a whole number of hours, so 4 will be the total number of hours she can rent the boat. Okay, let's see, number 17. What value of P is the solution of the equation above? All right, so for this, I think we'll just distribute. We're going to have 2p plus 2 plus 8p minus 8 equals 5p. Combined like terms, we've got 10p minus 6 equals 5p. I'm going to subtract 5p from both sides. I'm going to get 5p, and then I'm going to add 6 to both sides, and I will get I'll get 6. So then P equals 6/5. Number 18. All right, looks like we have a system of equations. And it says the system of equations above has solution xy. What's the value of x? Well, if we want to know the value of x, then we should be eliminating the y variable. Okay, and that's very handy that we've already got the y isolated in the second equation here. We can just do a direct substitution. We're going to get 1/2 of 2x plus 2x, because that's y, equals 21 over 2. Okay, well, if I distribute that, I know I've got 4x on the inside, and if I take half of that, I've got 2x equals 21 over 2, and then divide by 2, I will get x equals 21/4. Number 19. Okay, we've got an expression, and it is equivalent to a over x plus 2 squared, where a is a positive constant and x is not equal -2. What is the value of a? All right, so I'm gonna write this out here. We have 2x plus 6 over x plus 2 squared minus 2 over x plus 2 equals a over x plus 2 squared. Now, usually I'd be wanting to clear the denominators, isolate the variable to solve the equation. However, we have two variables in this case, so that is not going to be so helpful because we're going to end up with an expression with two variables. We won't get a value. So what I'm looking at here is that the denominator here and the denominator here are the same, and it's really just x plus 2 squared. So I can see that in this fraction I'm missing a factor of x plus 2. Well, if I multiply the bottom and the top by x plus 2 on the second term, then I'll be all my denominators will be equivalent. Okay, so then I can combine like terms. So I can combine those two fractions. So I'm going to get this, so 2x plus 6 over x plus 2 squared. Now I'm multiplying the top and the bottom by x plus 2, and then I'll get x plus 2 squared on bottom equals a over x plus 2 squared. Okay, so if I combine terms on the left, I'm going to have, it's going to be 2x plus 6, and then I'm going to distribute that negative 2 across, so it'll be negative 2x minus 4 all over x plus 2 squared equals a over x plus 2 squared. Okay, this is great because what I'm seeing here is that my 2x's cancel out, plus 2x minus 2x, and then I've got a 6 and a negative 4. Well, 6 and negative 4 is gonna total to 2, and then I'm gonna have 2 over x plus 2 squared equals a over x plus 2 squared. And it should be pretty clear that if the denominators are the same, then the numerators must also be the same. So the value of a is 2. Number 20. Intersecting lines R, S, and T are shown below. What is the value of x? Okay, so we know that the interior degrees of a triangle are going to sum to 180 degrees. So if we can figure out this angle and this angle, then we can figure out x, because x and this interior angle are going to be supplementary. So just right off the bat, I see that 106 and the linear pair with that interior angle of the triangle are going to be supplementary. So let's see, 106 plus 106 plus 74 is going to be 180 degrees. And then I know that the interior degrees of a triangle are going to sum to 180. Okay, so right now with this angle and this angle, we have a total of 97 degrees. And then how many degrees does the last angle have to be to total 180? Well, that angle must be 83 degrees. Okay. Again, we know that x and this 83 degree angle are a linear pair, therefore they're supplementary. And x in this case must be 97 degrees. Okay, section number 4. This is the calculator section. Right here we've got a list of our formulas for area, volume, and some information about circles down here on the bottom. We'll come back to that if needed. Number 1. Number of 3D movies released by year from 2003 to 2011. According to the line graph above, between which two consecutive years was there the greatest change in the number of 3D movies released? So the greatest change would be the change in the output, or the change in the movies released, right? So we're looking for the portion of the graph that has the steepest slope. So let's just go down through these and see what we get. 2003 to 2004, that's not very steep at all. Hardly any change in the output. 2008 to 2009, 2008 to 2009, well, that's an output change of a little bit more than 20. So that could be it. Let's see, 2009 to 2010. 2009 to 2010. Well, that has smaller output than 2008 to 2009, so I know that's not it. And then 2010 to 2011. Okay, well that's an output increase of what's that? 25 to 45. So that's a change of 20 versus this. Oops, my braces are not looking so good. There you go. Versus this, which is a change of a little bit more than 20, maybe 20. Oops, sorry, not 20. Change of a little bit more than 10, maybe 12. So it's going to be 2010 to 2011 is the greatest change. All right, number 2. Some values of the linear function f are shown in the table above. Which of the following defines f? We know it's a linear equation, therefore the rate of change is going to be constant, so we need to figure out the slope and the y-intercept. We see that we have a point, well, we have 3 points. We have 1, 5, and 3, 13. Okay. So remember that slope is the change in y over the change in x. Well, in this case, the change in y from 5 to 13 is 8, and the change in x from 1 to 3 is 2, so the slope is 4. Now, if the slope is 4, we can go ahead and start eliminating answers. A has a slope of 2, B has a slope of 3, and D has a slope of 5, so C can be our only solution. 3. To make a bakery's signature chocolate muffins, a baker needs 2.5 ounces of chocolate for each muffin. How many pounds of chocolate are needed to make 48 signature chocolate muffins? 1 pound is 16 ounces. Okay. So we know that 2.5 ounces, let's see, 2.5 ounces for 1 muffin. And we want to make 48 muffins. Well, if we're going to make 48 muffins, then it's going to be 2.5 times 48. I'll pull up a calculator real quick for that. So 1 times 48, 2.5 times 48. So we have 48 times 2.5. It's going to be 120 ounces. Well, 120 ounces, we want to convert that to pounds. So we need 120 ounces divided by 16 ounces. And that gives us the pounds, and it's going to be 7.5 pounds. Number 4, if 3 times c plus d equals 5, what is the value of c plus d? So this, we're just going to divide both sides by 3 to isolate the c plus d. 3 c plus d equals 5, so c plus d must equal 5 over 3. B. The weight of an object in Venus is approximately 9/10 of its weight on Earth. The weight of an object on Jupiter is approximately 23/10 of its weight on Earth. If an object weighs 100 pounds on Earth, approximately how many more pounds does it weigh on Jupiter than on Venus? Okay, well, 100 pounds on Earth and on Venus, if it weighs 100 pounds on Earth, it's going to weigh 9/10 of that on Venus. So that'd be 90 pounds on Venus, and on Jupiter, Jupiter, it weighs 23/10. Well, 23/10, that's going to be 230. So that's 2 3/10. So 2 3/10 of 100 is 230. And we're wanting to know approximately how many more pounds does it weigh on Jupiter than on Venus. Well, here we're just going to subtract 230 minus 90. We're going to get 140. So it weighs 140 pounds more on Jupiter. Number 6. An online bookstore sells novels and magazines. Each novel sells for $4 and each magazine sells for $1. If Sadie purchased a total of 11 novels and magazines that have a combined selling price of $20, how many novels did she purchase? Okay, so this is a system of equations. We know that she purchased some novels plus some magazines, and the total of 11 items. And the novels were selling for, novels were selling for $4. The magazines were selling for $1. And we know she spent a total of $20. Now we want to solve for novels, so we want to eliminate magazines. Okay, so I'm going to use my first equation here, and I'm going to eliminate, I'm going to subtract n from both sides. I'm going to get m equals 11 minus n. Okay, that's perfect. So now we've got a variable that we can substitute in. And we're going to have 4 novels plus number of magazines, which is 11 minus 1 novel. It's going to be equal to 20. All right, so combine like terms. I get 3n plus 11 equals 20. Subtract 11 from both sides. I get n equals 3. So the number of novels is going to be 3. Number 7, the Downtown Business Association in a certain city plans to increase its membership by a total of N businesses per year. There were B businesses in the association at the beginning of this year. Which function best models the number of businesses Y the association plans to have as members X years from now? Well, you guys should be, again, I'm going to say this over and over and over again, but you should be very familiar with this form of a linear equation. It's going to be very helpful. So we have the increase, the rate of change is going to be N businesses per year, and there are currently B businesses in the association. So N is going to be our slope, and B is going to be, N is going to be our slope, and B is going to be our y-intercept, and that's going to be A. Number 8. Which of the following is an equivalent form of... Ooh, okay. This does not... Let's see. Okay, well, I don't think there are any shortcuts to this because normally I would think, oh gee, well, let's look at the squared term in our solutions, and then let's think about what the squared term is going to be in our expression, and then we can kind of simplify it that way and take a little shortcut. But we have 2 of each, so that's not going to help us. So let's just power through this. Well, the first one is going to be 1.5x minus 2.4 times 1.5x minus 2.4, and then minus, and I'm going to distribute that, 5.2x squared plus 6.4. So my first the binomial here, we'll expand that. We're going to get 1.5 times 1.5. That's going to be 2.25 x squared, and then we're going to have 1.5 times, let's see, 1.5 times 2.4. That's going to be minus 3.6x, and then we're going to get again another minus 3.6x, and then plus 2.4 times 2.4. My calculator here, it says that's 5.76 minus what we got above that, 5.2x squared plus 6.4. Okay, so I'm just going to focus on my my squared terms, and I'm going to get this 2.5 minus 2.5 minus 5.2. It's going to be negative 2.7. 2.25. 2.25 minus 5.2, negative 2.95 x squared. Okay, dealt with those. And then I'll look at my linear terms. That's going to be negative 3.6 minus 3.6. That's going to be negative 7.2. Dealt with those. And then I've got 5.76 plus 6.4. 5.76 plus 6.4. That's 12.16. So our solution is going to be C. Okay, number 9. In the 1908 Olympic Games, the Olympic marathon was lengthened from 40 kilometers to approximately 42 kilometers. Of the following, which is closest to the increase in the distance of the Olympic marathon in miles, given that 1 mile is approximately 1.6 kilometers? Okay, so we know that 1 mile equals 1.6 kilometers. Okay, so we want to figure out how many miles a change in 2 kilometers, right? 2 kilometers is going to be. And to isolate my x in this proportion, I just have to multiply both sides by 2. I'll get 2 divided by 1.6 equals x. So I'm going to go to my calculator, and I'll get 2 divided by 1.6 equals 1.25 is the number of miles that the marathon was increased by. Number 10. The density d of an object is found by dividing the mass m of the object by its volume v. Which of the following equations gives the mass m in terms of d and v? Okay, this is a common type of problem. All we're doing here is solving for a given variable. Okay, it tells us that the density of an object is found by dividing the mass by the volume. Okay, so to get the mass all by itself, you need to multiply both sides by v. You'll get dv equals mass. Okay, well, that's going to be A. All right, 11. In the xy plane, the graph of which of the following equations is perpendicular to the graph of the equation above? Okay. Well, we should know that the slopes of perpendicular lines, so let's say this is the slope of these lines. If it's perpendicular, the slope of one will be the negative reciprocal of the other. Okay, so the negative reciprocal. All right, so to figure out the slope of this line, we need to put it into slope-intercept form, and that should be easy enough. Let's rewrite it down here. Add 2x to both sides, and then divide by 3. We're going to get 2/3 x plus 2. So the slope of this line equals 2/3. All right, so we're looking for an equation with a slope of -3/2. All right, so we're searching for -3/2. Okay. Now, if we look at the first equation and we subtract 3x from both sides, we'll get 2y equals -3x plus 6, and then divide by 2, we'll get -3/2 x plus 3, -3/2. So A is our solution. That was handy. We didn't even have to check any others. Number 12. The system of equations above has solution xy. What is the value of x? All right. If we want to solve for x, it's most efficient to eliminate the y variable. And to do that, all we need to do, looks like we can use the first equation here. First equation to figure out what y equals. Well, if you just multiply both sides by 2, we'll see that y equals 8. Okay, we plug that into the second equation, and we'll get x minus 1/2 of 8 equals 2. X minus 4 equals 2. X equals 6. D is our solution. Okay. Which of the following ordered pairs satisfies the system of inequalities above? Okay, so we've got a pretty simple expression right here. It'd be pretty easy just to check some values real quick to see possible solutions for the second inequality. For A, that'd be -2. That'd be -2 minus -1 is greater than 1. Well, -2 minus -1 is -1. So that one can't be true. A solution. The second one, B, that would be -1 minus 3 is greater than 1. Well, that's -4 is greater than 1. That's not true either. Okay. For C, we would have 1 minus 5 is greater than 1. Well, that's -4 is greater than 1. That's not true either. Okay, and then for the last one, we'll have 2 minus -1 is greater than 1. Yeah, 2 minus -1, that's 3. That's greater than 1. So D would be the solution. 14. In a survey, 607 general surgeons and orthopedic surgeons indicated their major professional activity. The results are summarized in the table above. If one of the surgeons is selected at random, which of the following is closest to the probability that the selected surgeon is an orthopedic surgeon whose indicated professional activity is research? Okay, so an orthopedic surgeon, type of surgeon, orthopedic surgeon, and we want to, type of activity is research. So there are 72 orthopedic surgeons that primarily do research. Okay, well, out of how many surveyed? It says that if one of the surgeon is selected at random, okay, so then there's a total of 607. So it'd be 74 out of 607. And then we would want to simplify that into a decimal. I'm going to go to my calculator. 74 divided by 607. That's going to be equal to approximately 0.122, rounded to thousandths. And that is our answer, A. Number 15. A polling agency recently surveyed 1,000 adults who were selected at random from a large city and asked each of the adults, "Are you satisfied with the quality of air in the city?" Of those surveyed, 78% responded that they were satisfied with the quality of air in the city. Based on the results of the survey, which of the following statements must be true? Okay, so let's take a look at our solutions, or our answers. Number 1, if all adults in the city, of all adults in the city, 78% are satisfied with the quality of air in the city. Well, I think the key here is are. Okay, that's a strong statement. It's not necessarily true that exactly 78% are going to be satisfied with the air. We could say that in the city, 78% of the population will likely or are likely going to be satisfied with the air, but we can't say definitively that they will. So I can say no to 1. Okay, number 2. If another 1,000 adults selected at random from the city were surveyed, 78% of them would report they are satisfied with the quality of the air in the city. Now, we're talking about an average of 78%. So if you took 5 samples, on average, you should be approximately close to 78%, but not necessarily going to be exactly 78%. Of the surveyed would be satisfied with the air. And 3, if 1,000 adults selected at random from a different city are surveyed, 78% of them would report they are satisfied with the quality of the air. Well, different city has no correlation. At least the other two would be maybe close. This one is not going to be close at all necessarily, so I'm going to say A for number 15. All right, 16 through 18, we have this table. One method of calculating the approximate age in years of a tree of a particular species is to multiply the diameter of the tree in inches by a constant called the growth factor for that species. The table above gives the growth factors for 8 species of trees. 16. According to the information in the table, what is the approximate age of an American elm tree with a diameter of 12 inches? Okay, so we want to find the growth factor of an American elm. So let's see, American elm has a growth factor of 4.0. And we know that we can calculate the age in years by multiplying the diameter by the growth factor. Okay, so if we know that the diameter of this American elm is 12 inches, and we know that the growth factor, the growth factor is 4, well, then we should expect that it's 48 years old. D is the solution. Number 17. The scatter plot above gives the tree diameter plotted against age for 26 trees of a single species. The growth factor of this species is closest to that of which of the following species of tree? Okay, so we know that the age of a tree, I'm going to say that's A, is equal to the diameter times the growth factor. Okay, well, the diameter is going to be our input variable, that's D, and the age is going to be our output, it's A, and then the rate of change in this case must be the growth factor. So we're trying to figure out the growth factor, the rate of change for this relationship here. Okay, so what is the slope, approximate slope of this line? Well, let's approximate here. I'm going to approximate that we've got a 1280, and let's say we've got a 15110. Okay, so a 12 with an 80 output and a 15 with a 110 output. So we're looking for the slope of this line, the rate of change. That's going to be 110 minus 80 over 15 minus 12. 110 minus 80 is 30, and 15 minus 12 is 3. So we're looking at a rate of change of 10. Now that's pretty high. It looks like none of the growth factors are quite that high, but it looks like most of them are pretty low. Most of them are below 5, and this one, the shagbark hickory, is the only one that's significantly higher. I'm going to go with D for our solution. Number 18. If a white birch tree and a pin oak tree each now have a diameter of 1 foot, which of the following would be closest to the difference in inches of their diameters 10 years from now? Okay, well, a white birch has a growth factor of 5. A pin oak has a growth factor of 3. And we know that the age of a tree can be calculated by its diameter times its growth factor. So if they're both 1 foot in diameter or 12 inches in diameter, remember that our equation here is in inches. If they're both 12 inches in diameter, then we can calculate their current age. So the age of the birch, let's see, so the age equals the diameter, which is 12 currently, and times its growth factor, which is 5. So the current age of the birch is 60 years. The current age of the oak, the pin oak, is going to be the age times the diameter, 12, times its growth factor, which is 3. So the age of the oak is currently 36. Okay, and we want to know in 10 years, what's the difference in the diameters? Well, we need to figure out the diameter of the trees in 10 years. So the diameter of the birch in 10 years, well, it would be 70 years old, right? And we don't know the diameter, but we know we're going to be multiplying the diameter of whatever it is times 5 to get 70. So we can divide both sides by 5, and we'll see that what is that, 14 equals the diameter. Okay, and for the oak, we can see that in 10 years it'll be 46 years old, and we want to figure out the diameter, but we know the growth factor is 3, so we can divide both sides by 3, and we will get what is that, 46 divided by 3 equals the diameter. That's going to be, pull out a calculator, 46 divided by 3, 15 and a third inches diameter. Okay, so now the question is asking what will be the closest difference in inches? Well, the difference in inches is going to be 1 1/3. The oak is 1 1/3 inches larger than the birch, so 1 1/3. Our answer would be C. Okay. Oops. Okay. We have a triangle here, and we know that ABC above is split into two halves. Okay. Now if this angle in the bottom right here is 60, then we know that this angle up here must be 30. Must be 30 because they have to add up to 180. 30 plus 60 plus 90. So it's a 60, 30, 90, and the triangle on the left, well, this must be 60, right? Because we have a 90-degree angle here and a 30 in the top. So they're definitely similar triangles, and they share a side, therefore they're congruent triangles. If they're congruent, then corresponding sides will be congruent as well. We know that we're looking for AD, which is this side. So if we found DC, we would be happy. Since this is the calculator section of the test, you could just plug in. We could say, okay, well, I know that cosine is going to relate adjacent and hypotenuse, so cosine of 60 will equal, it's going to equal adjacent over hypotenuse, and adjacent is DC, hypotenuse is 12. Well, if you remember from your unit circle, cosine of 60 degrees is going to be the x value at the circumference. So the x value at the circumference is going to be 1/2. So cosine of 60 is 1/2. You could plug that into your calculator. You'll get 1/2 or 0.5. Now we can just multiply both sides by 12. And we get 12 over 2 equals the length of DC, or 6 equals the length of DC. Well, we already said that DC is the same as AD, so AD must be 6. All right, 20. The figure on the graph on the left above shows a wheel with a mark on its rim. The wheel is rolling on the ground at a constant rate along a level, straight path from a starting point to an ending point. The graph of y equals d of t on the right could represent which of the following as a function of time from when the wheel began to roll. Okay. A, the speed at which the wheel is rolling. Well, if the wheel is rolling at a constant rate, the graph of a constant rate is just going to be a constant. So A is not our solution. B, the distance of the wheel from its starting point. Well, the distance of a wheel from its starting point, it's getting further and further away at a constant rate, starting at right next to it. It would be a linear graph. So B is not our answer. C, the distance of the mark on the rim from the center of the wheel. Well, the distance from on the mark on the rim of the wheel to the center isn't changing, right? It's always the same distance. It's going to be the radius. That too is going to be a horizontal line or a constant. So C can't be our answer. D must be it. Let's read it anyways. The distance of the mark on the rim from the ground. Yes. From the rim to the ground, that's going to be going up and down, right? And what you're going to end up with is a sine curve or cosine curve, either way. 21. In the equation above, if A is negative and B is positive, which of the following must be true? If A is negative and B is positive, okay, so let's see, which of the following must be true? Well, if A is negative and B is positive, then you're going to have some negative in your denominator, and a negative minus a positive, it's going to be some negative in the numerator, so that's going to have to be equal to a positive. So therefore C is going to have to be a positive value. So that means that I can rule out the possibility of C or D because they're both negative. Now for C to be equal to 1, well then A minus B would have to be equal to A. And since we know that one of them is positive and one of them is negative, that cannot be possible. So we know C has to be greater than 1. Number 22. In state X, Mr. Camp's 8th grade class consisting of 26 students was surveyed, and 34.6% of the students reported that they had at least 2 siblings. The average 8th grade class size in the state is 26. If the students in Mr. Camp's class are representative of students in the state's 8th grade classes, and there are 1,800 8th grade classes in the state, which of the following best estimates the number of 8th grade students in the state who have fewer than 2 siblings? Okay, so we gotta have some. We know that 34% of the students report that they had at least 2 siblings. So if 34% of his class had at least that many siblings, well, then how many had fewer than 2 siblings? Well, it would be the difference, 100 with a difference minus 100 minus 34.6. 100 minus 34.6, would that be 66, 65.4. Now, let's see. If 65% of the class had fewer than 2 siblings, and the class is representative of the whole state, well, then we need to figure out how many students are in the whole state, and we can take 65.4% of that population. Well, there are an average of 26 students in a class, and there are 1,800 classes in the state. So we're just going to do 1,800 times 26. Go to my calculator on that. 1,800 times 26. So 46,800 students. And we want 64%, so we're going to take the whole, 46,800, times the percent as a decimal, 0.654, and I'm going to get that on my calculator, times 0.654, 30,607, and that is most close to C. 30,600 will be our answer. Okay, 23. This is a table for Townsend Realty Group investments. The Townsend Realty Group invested in the 5 different properties listed in the table above. The table shows the amount in dollars the company paid for each property and the corresponding monthly rental price in dollars. The company charges for the property at each of the 5 locations. Now, 23 is asking, let's see, the relationship between the monthly rental price R in dollars and the property's purchase price P in thousands of dollars can be represented by a linear function. Which of the following functions represent this relationship? Now, key here is you should really take note when they underline things on the SAT. It's a good idea that you want to pay special attention to that. So, which of the following represents this relationship? Well, we can see right away that these are all linear functions. And again, y equals mx plus b. This is coming up again and again. You guys should be really fluent with this form of a linear equation. So we can see that the rate of change for each of these is different. Okay, that means that if we can just simply find the rate of change in this relationship, we should be able to pick out the correct function. So let's see, the rate of change is going to be the rental price is our output. All right, so rate of change is going to equal the change in the rental price, and the purchase price is our input, so divided by the change in our input. So let's just take any 2 points or data points from our table. These models are linear, so the relationship should be constant. The rate of change should be constant. I'm just going to take the first 2. So those points would be 1,000 or 128,000 and 950, and the other data point would be 176,000 and 1,310. Okay, so we're looking for the change in the output So we're going to do 1,310 minus 950 over the change in the input, which is going to be 1,760,000 minus 128,000. Okay, so I'm going to go to my calculator. I'm going to see that 1310 minus 950 equals 360, and 176,000 minus 128,000 is 48,000. Okay. Now the rate of change is going to be in thousands, so we can drop our thousands here in the denominator. Okay. So what we have is 360 over 48, so 360 divided by 48 equals 7.5. 7.5 is our rate of change, is our slope. That means D is going to be our answer. It's the only one with that slope. Number 24. Townsend Realty purchased the Glenview Street property and received 40% discount off the original price, along with a 20% discount, or along with additional 20% off the discounted price for purchasing the property in cash. Which of the following best approximates the original price in dollars of the Glenview Street property? Okay, so the original price, we'll call that X. They got a 40% discount. That means instead of paying 100%, they paid 60%, which is 6/10. So whatever this price was, they got an additional 20% off. Okay, 20% off 100% is 80%, so we're going to multiply by 0.8. Okay, and that equals the exact purchase price that they actually spent, which was $140,000. Okay. Now I'm going to simplify this. We get 6 times 8 is 48 with 2 decimal places. Okay. Now I'm going to divide both sides by 0.48. Go to my calculator. 140,000 divided by 0.48 equals $291,666. Okay, approximately. All right, and which is closest to that? Well, that's going to be B. Will be closest to the original price of the property. 25. A psychologist set up an experiment to study the tendency of a person to select the first item when presented with a series of items. In the experiment, 300 people were presented with a set of 5 pictures arranged in random order. Each person was asked to choose the most appealing picture. Of the first 150 participants, 36 chose the first picture in the set. Among the remaining 150 participants, P people chose the first picture in the set. If more than 20% of all participants chose the first picture in the set, which of the following inequalities best describes the possible values of P? Okay, so the we want the percent to be greater than 20%, so we can start with that. We know we want to be greater than 0.20 or 20%. And we know that there are a total of, total of 300 participants, and 36 chose the first picture in the first set, plus some number chose the first picture in the second set, and P chose the first picture in the second set. So now I think we're just going to be manipulating this inequality. If we multiply both sides by 300, we'll get 36 plus p is greater than 0.2 or 0.20 times 300. Okay, well, okay, right away I'm seeing that D matches. So, it's in a slightly different order, P plus 36, but it's the same effective. 26. The surface area of a cube is 6 times a on 4 squared, where a is a positive constant. Which of the following gives the perimeter of one face of the cube? Okay, so a cube a cube has 6 sides. I can sketch that out as such. Let's see. Start with black, yeah. Okay. So count all these sides. We've got we've got the front side, got the bottom, you have the right side, back side, or sorry, the left side, the back side, and the top. Oh boy, that got kind of messy. Well, you're going to have the left side, the right side, the back side, the front side, the bottom side, and the top side. That will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 sides to the cube. We know that the surface area of the cube is a on 4 squared. Therefore, each side must have an area of a on 4 squared. And if we want to know the perimeter, so each face has an area of a on 4 squared. Well, the area is just the side, the square of the sides. So then each side must be a on 4, and the perimeter is just the sum of the sides, which would be 4 times 4 on a. 4 times 4 on a, a on 4 times a on 4 is just a. A would be the perimeter of each face. 27. The mean score of 8 players in a basketball game was 14.5 points. If the highest individual score is removed, the mean score of the remaining 7 players becomes 12 points. What was the highest score? Okay, so we know that the mean is the average, which is the sum of all eight players, so divided by the number of players. So it's the sum divided by 8 equals 14.5. And it says that if we remove one of the player's scores, let's say that's x, we have the sum minus that player's score. Now it's out of 7, and we know that it equals 12. Okay, and we're trying to figure out what the x value is. Okay, well, we can solve this first equation for the sum, and we'll see that the sum equals, well, 14, go to my calculator, 14.5 times 8. The sum is 116. Okay, well then in the second equation, we can multiply both sides by 7. We'll get the sum, which is 116 minus 116, and then minus x equals 12 times 7, That's going to be, let's see, 84. And then we have negative x, subtract 116 from both sides, 84 minus 116, get negative 32. So x must equal 32. So C is our solution. 28. The graph of the linear function f is shown in the xy plane above. The slope of the graph of the linear function g is 4 times the slope of the graph of f. If the graph of g passes through the point 0, 4, or 0, negative 4, what is the value of g of 9? Okay, so let's see. We've got f, and we know that the slope of g is 4 times. So the slope of g equals 4 times the slope of f. Okay, well, what is the slope of f? The slope of f is just the change in y divided by the change in x. In this case, it looks like it's a change in 1 over a change in 2. So the slope of f is 1/2. So therefore, the slope of g must be 2. Okay. We also know that g goes through the point 0, 4. Therefore, we can say, well, we know that, again, you guys should be very fluent with y equals mx plus b, right? Keeps coming up. For g, we know that g of x is going to have a slope of 2, and we just don't know the y-intercept. Okay, until we look at what the point that they gave us. The point they gave us is 0, negative 4. That is the y-intercept. So negative 4 must be the y-intercept. Now, all we're doing is figuring out g of 9, plugging 9 into our function, and we see that we get 18 minus 4. That's going to be 14. C is the solution to number 28. Number 29. The equation above defines a circle in the xy plane. What are the coordinates of the center of the circle? Okay, so this doesn't come up on every SAT practice that I've done so far, but it's come up on maybe half of them. The equation of a circle is x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals the radius squared. So you should probably at least know the standard equation of a circle. So what we need to do here is to create these perfect square terms. All right, this is going to be a perfect square. This is a perfect square. So we have to do what's called completing the square, and that will look like this. So the first thing we do is we are going to group our x's and our y's together. That's already the case, but I'm going to leave a little bit of extra room between my x's and my y's, and a little room after my y. Okay. We know that to have a perfect square, c must equal b over 2 squared. So what we're going to do here is we're going to take b divided by 2 and square it. Okay, so 20 divided by 2 is 10, squared is 100. Okay, well then I have to, if I add 100 to the left, I have to subtract 100 from the right. Do the same with y. Half of 16 is 8, squared is 64. Sorry, add 100 to the right. So I'm going to add 64 to the right. Now on the left side, we've got these perfect square expressions here, and those are going to factor as such. X plus 10 squared. When you factor it, it's always going to be x plus b over 2 squared. Okay. If you have a perfect square, that's how it's going to factor. All right, and factor the y's. We'll get y plus 8 squared. Okay. Now I could add up these terms and figure out what the radius is, but that's not what the question is asking. The questions are asking what's the center of the circle, and the center of the circle is going to be at h comma k. Center of the circle is at h comma k. But note that in our equation for a circle, it's minus h. So in this case, minus of negative 10 would be plus 10. So our x value is going to be negative 10, and our y value is going to be negative 8. That's the center of the circle. Our answer is B. 30. The equation above, a is a positive constant, and the graph of the equation in the xy plane is a parabola. Which of the following is equivalent form of the equation? Okay, so you should be pretty familiar with difference of squares. Difference of squares. Okay, that just says that if we have a squared minus b squared, that can factor as a minus b, a plus b. Okay, so all we need to do is apply that same principle. Now a doesn't appear to be a perfect square, at least not that we know, but we can kind of force it, right? If a were a perfect square, if the second term were a perfect square, we would be taking the square root of it to get these two pieces. We're taking the square root of x to get the first piece. So x squared minus a will equal the square root of the first minus the square root of the second, which is square root of a, and then square root of the first plus square root of the second. Okay, so that looks like answer B. 31. Horsepower and watts are units of measure of power. They are directly proportional such that 5 horsepower is equal to 3,730 watts. How much power in watts is equal to 2 horsepower? Okay, so if they are directly proportional, then we should be able to set up a proportion. So 5 horsepower equals 3,730 watts. So 2 horsepower is going to equal a certain number of watts. Okay, then we'll get cross multiply. We'll get 5x. I'm just going to do that on a calculator. 3,730 times 2 is 7,460, and divide by 5. Do that on my calculator. 7,460 divided by 5 equals 1,492. 1,000. So 2 horsepower should equal 1,492 watts. 32. The painting The Starry Night by Vincent van Gogh is rectangular in shape with height 29 inches and width 36.25 inches. If a reproduction was made where each dimension is 1/3 the corresponding original dimension, what is the height of the reduction in inches? So we're taking a rectangle, We're taking a rectangle that is 29 inches by 36.25. We're scaling it down by a factor of 1/3. So it would just be 29 times 1/3, or 29 on 3. And 29 divided by 3 is approximately 9.67 inches. All right, 33. The figure is not drawn to scale. Okay. On PS above, PQ equals RS. What is the length of PS? Okay, so we know that PQ equals RS. Okay, so just from that, I think I can figure out what X is. So X minus 1 must equal 3X minus 7. Okay, so if I add 1 to both sides, I get X equals 3X minus 6. Subtract 3X minus 3X, I get negative 2X equals negative 6. Divide by negative 2, X equals 3. Okay, well, if X equals 3, we're just going to go through and add up our segments. We've got 1X, another X, and then 3 X's. That's going to be a total of 5 X's. Then we have a negative 1 and a negative 7. So that's going to be a minus 8. So that's going to equal PS. All right. So substitute in 3 for X. We get 15 minus 8 is PS. So 7 is the length of PS. 34. In the xy plane, the point 2, 5 lies on the graph of the function f. If f of x equals k minus x squared, where k is a constant, what is the value of k? All right, so a little function notation here. We know that f of x equals k minus x squared. Well, the point 2, 5 is an input and an output. The input is 2. Input is 2. And the output, well, f of 2 equals 5. So I know that, and 2 squared is 4. I'm going to add 4 to both sides. 9 equals k. 35. A landscaper is designing a rectangular garden. The length of the garden is to be 5 feet longer than the width. If the area of the garden will be 104 square feet, what will be the length in feet of the garden? Okay, let's do a little sketch. We know that the length is going to be longer than the width. So let's say the width is here, and the length, well, the length is going to be the width plus 5. So the area of this garden is going to be, well, length times width. That's going to be a W times W plus 5. Okay. And we know that the area is going to equal 104 square feet. So we should just, I'm going to distribute this W. And then this is a quadratic. To solve a quadratic, we have to set it equal to 0. 0 equals W squared plus 5W minus 104. Now, the a value is 1, so I'm looking for two numbers that multiply to multiply to C, and add to B. So I'm looking for factors of 104. I'm going to write it over on the left. 1 and 104, 2 and 52. Check 3. No, 3 doesn't go in. 4, yeah, sure, 4 goes in 27 times. 5 doesn't go in. 6 can't because 3 can't. 7, 104 divided by 7. No, 7 doesn't go in. I'm just going to check on my calculator right here. Does 8 go in? 8, yeah, 8 goes in. I think 8 goes into 80 and then 24. So 8 would go in 10 times and then 3. Oh boy, okay, well we know that we're multiplying to a negative and we're adding to a positive 5. So if I chose negative 13, oops, not negative 13, negative 8 and positive 13, I think that would work. So we can factor this as w minus 8, w plus 13 equals 0. Okay, so 8 must be equal to, or sorry, w must be equal to 8, or w must be equal to negative 13. Well, we're talking about length, and length is not negative, so the width must be 8. All right, so it's asking for what length. The width is 8. The length must be 8. Well, we know it's going to be 8 plus 5, so the length equals 13. 36. Point P is in the center of the circle in the figure above. What is the value of x? All right, well, right off the bat, I think, let's see, so this arc length right here is going to be equal to x in degrees, and this angle is going to be half of x, so it's going to be x on 2. Okay, let's see if that's going to help us any. I can also see that if I cut this in half here, yeah, okay, so if I cut this in half, I'm going to have two isosceles triangles. Okay, so if I have two isosceles triangles, I know that an isosceles triangle will have the base angles have to be congruent. So if we know that one of these base angles is 20, then this angle must be 20 as well. Okay, so and these two triangles above and below here, this triangle and this triangle below are going to have the same base angles of 20 and 20. Then I know that if I zoom into this piece right here, I know that it's gonna be two angles that are both 20 degrees. So the sum of that corner there, angle BAC, must equal 40. So if I know that angle BAC equals 40, and I know that that's half of x, well then x must equal 80. Okay, so Miss Simon drives her car from her home to work every workday morning. The table above shows the distance in miles and her average driving speed in miles per hour when there is no traffic delay for each segment of her drive. Okay. One morning, Miss Simon drove directly from her home to her workplace in 24 minutes, what was her average speed in miles per hour during her drive that morning? All right, so we know how long it took her, so we just need to know what the distance was. We know the time, we need to know the distance, and we can find her average speed. Well, the distance is right here. There were three segments, right? So home to the freeway, freeway to the exit, and then from the exit to the workplace. So we're just going to sum up those segments. And 1.4, it's going to be 1471. So 17.4 miles. And we know that it took her 24 minutes. So we're talking about miles. We want miles per hour. If we know that it took 17.4 to travel 17.4 miles, it took her 24 minutes. Well, we kind of want to know how many minutes, or how many how many hours 24 minutes is. So 24 minutes is a fraction of 60 minutes. So we're going to divide by 24 over 60. Okay, so we're going to come down here. We know that dividing by a fraction is the same as multiplying by its reciprocal. So we can multiply this by 60 over 24. And we will get, on my calculator, 17.4 times 60 is equal to 1044 over 24. That's going to be 43.5. So the average miles per hour was 43.5 for her trip. 38. If Miss Simon starts her drive at 6:30 a.m., she can drive at her average driving speed with no traffic delay for each segment of the drive. If she starts her drive at 7 a.m., the travel time from the freeway entrance to the freeway exit increases by 33% due to slower traffic. But the travel time for each of the other two segments of her drive does not change. Based on the table, how many more minutes does Miss Simon take to arrive at her workplace if she starts her drive at 7 than if she starts her drive at 6:30? Okay. Well, the only thing that changes is the time that she spends on the freeway. All right, so if we figure out the base time with no traffic, and then figure out the time with traffic, which would be 33% more, then we can answer this question. All right, so the time that she spends is going to be equal to the distance divided by the speed, because if we recall, distance equals speed times time. Therefore, time is going to equal distance divided by speed. Okay. So if we have a distance of 15.4 miles, and we want to divide that by the speed, which is 50, that should give us the time. Now this will give us time in hours because we're dividing by miles per hour. Go to my calculator. 15.4 divided by 50, that's going to be, she spends 0.308 hours on the freeway in ideal conditions. Now, that's if she leaves at 6:30. If she leaves at at 7, it's going to be 33% longer. So that's going to be, let's do this in a different color, do this in blue. So it'll be 33% longer, which would be 0.308 times 1.33. Close enough. Will equal the time at 7 o'clock. Plug that in my calculator. I'm going to get times 1.33. So 0.4096. Okay. And then we want to know the how many more minutes it takes. Well, it's going to be the difference. So I'm going to take 0.4096 minus 0.308, and I'm going to get minus 0.1016. Okay, that's in hours. I want to convert that to minutes. So to convert that to minutes, I need to multiply by 60. So 0.1016 times 60 equals, it's going to be in minutes. In minutes, it's going to take 6.098. I'm going to round that up. 6.1 minutes. Now they wanted round to the nearest minute, so we're going to say 6 additional minutes.